Hello, distinguished friends and colleagues. This is Stuart Hamilton, the Pro-Life Activities Coordinator for the Archdiocese of Louisville, Kentucky, serving under Deacon Stephen Bowling. And this is 5 Minutes for Life, where we take 5 minutes to discuss one topic, one event, or one ministry that affects the pro-life community here in the Archdiocese of Louisville. Well, that's actually a misnomer because this is a double-sized episode dealing with the Gaza-Israeli conflict. Now, you may be wondering, what does a war being waged halfway across the world have to do with the pro-life community here in the Archdiocese? Well, number one, this war is in the Holy Land, the birthplace of our Lord and His bride, the Church. And the Church has been greatly concerned over this conflict. Now, the Church doesn't take sides. It's not on the Israeli side or the Palestinian side. It's always on the side of the suffering. And I recently read an article from the perspective of a Palestinian Christian, which discussed how many people have become callous towards the huge loss of life happening there. Number two, you may have noticed there have been lots of protests on college campuses and in big cities, and most of them are pro-Palestinian. They're making two essential claims. Number one, that the Palestinians have just cause to go to war with the Israelis, and number two, that the Israelis are waging their war in such a way that they are unjust. So what about these two claims? I'd like to evaluate them from the perspective of church moral teaching and to give you a way to process this conflict from a pro-life Christian perspective. So without further ado, what about that first claim that the Palestinians have just cause to go to war with Israel? Well, that entirely depends on what you say the cause of the war is. You see, there are many people that are organizing these protests that have lumped the Palestinian cause in with their own agenda, which is communist in nature. They are claiming that both the U.S. as well as Israel are Western imperialist powers that need to be dismantled on ideological grounds. Now, the Church has written extensively against communism in the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries, but in general, it has never just caused to go to war on the grounds of ideology alone, so we're going to throw that out right off the bat. But has Israel actually provoked the Palestinians in some other way? For that, we're going to have to turn to history. Now, I can't give you a complete history here, but I did put a link in the description of this video to a really great, unbiased video that briefly talks about a really good history of the two peoples in the land of Israel that I really think you should watch. But in short, after World War II, the British Empire and the United Nations gave a piece of land to the Jews who already lived in the land, by the way, to establish the Israeli state. Immediately, the broader Arab community surrounding Israel staged a series of wars against Israel, and Israel won each of these wars. But in doing so, they actually expanded their land way beyond the bounds of the land originally given to them by the British Empire. Now, this did two things. First of all, in order to win these wars, Israel had to show extreme force, and that created huge civilian casualties among the Arabs, and in particular the Palestinian Arabs. Two, by conquering these new lands, you actually created refugee populations among the Arabs. So many people believe that for these two reasons alone, the civilians that were killed and these refugee populations are just grounds for war. Now, I should say that Israel never provoked any of those past wars, and Israel has in fact parceled back quite a bit of that land to the Arab communities in order to establish a willingness to enter into peace agreements. One such parcel of land is the Gaza Strip, the center of this current war. The Gaza Strip is given to the Palestinians completely by the Israelis in 2005, but unfortunately in 2006 a terrorist organization known as Hamas took over the Gaza Strip and the Palestinian people and began to use the Strip as a staging ground for missile strikes intermittently into Israel, and they've done so for decades. Now, I was in Israel in 2007, and in order to secure itself, Israel had gone to extreme lengths that were extremely controversial. First, they built a border wall completely surrounding the Gaza Strip, which made it landlocked, and the people couldn't develop economically or politically. Secondly, every time Hamas struck them, Israel struck back with 3 times the force, causing huge civilian casualties. Now, you should understand, 40% of the Palestinians living in the Strip do not agree with Hamas. They don't support Hamas, but they can't get rid of Hamas. And Hamas uses civilians in order to, as shields, okay, so that when Israel strikes back, they will gain sympathies in the international community. What this has amounted to here is a humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. And even the Vatican has recognized this. Billions of dollars of aid was funneled into the Gaza Strip, but then quickly confiscated by the Palestinian Authority and Hamas to further their own military goals. Now, there is a kernel of truth that the extreme measures that Israel has taken against the Palestinians would basically make it necessary that the Palestinians at some point fight them in order to have any sort of self-direction. However, it is equally true that the Palestinians have suffered greatly under their own leadership, and nothing justifies what Hamas did on October 7th, 2023. On October 7th, Hamas broke through the border wall and slaughtered 12,000 Israeli citizens. They killed whole families, mass raped women, and took 250 hostages back into the Gaza Strip and hid them in their underground tunnel system. Now, this was the beginning of the Palestinian war proper. So I'm moving to that second idea. Is Israel waging the war in an unjust way? Well, look, Israel had just cause to go to war. Hamas has stated publicly that they will do this again, and they will continue doing this until Israel is no more. Israel has to defend itself specifically against Hamas, and they are saying that this war is against Hamas alone, not the Palestinian Arabs. 2, war was a last option for the Israelis. The Israelis have tried to create peace deals with the Palestinian population multiple times in history. As recently as 2008, the Israelis even offered a 2-state solution, but Hamas would not come to the table. They will not be satisfied until there is no Israel. But now we have to enter into this concept of just war theory called proportionality. From the church teaching, you must never wage a war in such a way that you kill more innocent life than the threat you're fighting against. And you must, in your war, have at least a hope of success. And success from a Christian perspective is that there would, at the end of the war, at least be the beginning stages of justice, peace, and harmony between the two peoples. So is Israel fighting with this sort of proportionality in mind? We'd have to say no. Just a couple of stats here. Since the beginning of the war, Israel has killed 24,000 citizens in the Gaza Strip. 24,000. And roughly 3/4 of that were women and children. In other words, non-combatants. The way Israel operates here is they actually warn the people where they're going to strike and tell the people to leave within so many hours. But if they don't leave, or if they can't leave, it doesn't matter. Israel will treat the people in that region as a combatant, and they will bomb that area until nothing lives. Basically, it seems like Israel, in its efforts to root out Hamas, is making the Gaza Strip completely unlivable. And to put this in perspective, 4% of the entire Christian community living in the Gaza Strip is wiped out by one missile strike which hit a Greek Orthodox church when it was in service. This is unacceptable. It could be described as war crimes, but it is definitely not just to wage a war in such a way that you would go to any lengths to stop your enemy. And that seems to be what's happening here. Now, the last little moment here, I want to talk a little bit about moving forward. I was greatly touched to watch a TED Talk. And what it was a Palestinian and an Israeli sitting down to talk about their experiences in this war. Both had lost family members due to the fighting. And both said, in order to move forward, the Israelis and the Palestinians have to acknowledge this pain, acknowledge that this bloodshed has been disproportionate on both sides in order to establish a line of communication to move forward. I put a link to that video in the description of this video, and I plead with you to watch it because in there, I believe, is the Christian perspective, the pro-life perspective. When these two men are willing to set aside their personal pain in order to dialogue, you see hope for peace. We can only pray that this will go to the Israeli leadership and they can find some other way to achieve their objectives there in the Gaza Strip. Okay, I am out of time. I just want to say to you that every human life is worth fighting for, because every human life, whether Palestinian or Jewish, Israeli or Christian or anything in between, has values and dignity in the eyes of God. If you like what I'm doing here, please smash that like button. I promise next week's episode will be much shorter and it will be on the theme of religious freedom. God bless you, and we'll see you here next time.